Be the envy of the neighborhood. 860 KKAT, where the grass is always greener. Welcome to Gardening Utah. Here's composter and show hoster, Jana Francis.
Welcome to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis. Every week here on Gardening Utah, we give you gardening inspiration and advice from experts across the state. We talk about all things vegetables, flowers, trees, shrubs, and of course, your lawn. Thank you so much for listening. We really hope that this show is something that you look forward to listening to every week. Episodes drop every weekend on Apple Podcasts to get you ready for all the chores you need to do in the yard on the weekend. I hope this is a fun and informative show that you can listen to while you're starting to get to work in the garden or while you're out and about shopping in nurseries and garden centers. So one of the reasons that we wanted to start this show is to really support the local nursery, the local garden center. And that is exactly what today's show is all about, because I'm actually going to be able to speak with the owner of one of the nurseries that I have shopped with since I was a kid. I mean, I remember going to this nursery with my mom. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the nursery at Quality Flowers and Plants, just right there on 3300 South and 1046 East in Salt Lake City. So I've continued to shop there year after year. And I'm really excited because I was able to talk to Mike, the owner, today, and we were able to coordinate to get him on the show, and so I'm super excited. And one of the things that really inspired me as well, as far as getting him on the show now, is because he did this really cool post on Facebook, and he was talking about how right now his greenhouse is filled with poinsettias. And they're green right now, but they're going to start changing color between now and a month from now when, people start buying poinsettias around, just around the first of, before Thanksgiving, somewhere around November 20th, I think is when he said sales really start to pick up. And that's exactly when all of his poinsettias will be in full color. Well, he's invited anyone to bring their children by in case anyone needs a science experiment or a fun little, just an educational tool where they can go to the nursery once a week and take a picture of the poinsettias as they change color. He mentioned he has so many different colors, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear this episode. We have so much fun talking about that, as well as so many interesting stories about what's changing in the perennial and annual flower space, and we're going to get to so much more. But first, you know what time it is, the tip of the week.
860 KKAT with your Gardening Utah tip of the week.
My tip of the week is take care of those garden tools. Now listen, there's more to gardening than tending to your weeds and plants. It also requires proper tool maintenance and care. And a quality garden starts with quality care, and that doesn't just mean keeping up with your weeds. Maintaining these garden tools will make sure that any chore you complete gets done with accuracy and precision. And not only do tools need to be sharp, but it's very important for them to be clean and sterile so they don't accidentally spread disease or viruses across your garden beds. And of course, and I'm very guilty of this, make sure to store your tools in a dry location. Don't just leave them on the grass for tomorrow's chores or stick them on the side of maybe a raised bed. Yeah, been there, done that. In fact, I did it last night. But this is just a great reminder for all of us, right? So here is how to keep your tools in good shape for any gardening issue that comes up and to store them for the winter. So start by washing the dirt off of your tools with either a garden hose or get a little wire brush and scrub them down. And you can dip your tools in a diluted solution of bleach. And then turpentine could be used for anything that might have sap on it. And you can also use vinegar to soak items that have rust on them. And give those wooden handles, if you've got really nice tools, you can get like a teak or a linseed oil and give those wooden handles just a light coat of that. Not only does a thorough cleaning mean sterile tools, but it also means that your tools will last longer, and just think of it as protecting your investment. And if you have time, you can sharpen those as well. It's a very good time to get those ready for next year. And storing them. So make sure that even when you'll be using your tools the next day, don't leave them out in the elements, like I said. return them to the shed or maybe the garage, depending on where you store your garden tools. Make sure that they will be kept dry, and then they're likely to remain rust-free all winter long. And then when it comes time to bust those boys out next year, you're ready to go. And that was the tip of the week.
Never miss a tip for your garden. Never miss a tip for your garden, and never miss an episode. The Gardening Utah Podcast with Jana Francis on 860 KKAT.
Okay, so I wanted to touch on a question that we received from one of our listeners. They sent us a direct message at Gardening Utah. So this message is from Chad, and he's asking, there is a good deal on some trees and shrubs at his local garden center, and he's wondering, is it too late to plant? Absolutely not. And as a matter of fact, Chad, now is the perfect time. And here's why. First of all, soil temperatures really favor planting right now because in the spring, the plants are often planted in cold, wet soil, and consequently, the root growth is minimal. But right now, the opposite's true. The soil's warm, and it's going to stay warm for a couple more weeks at least, or another month at least. So now is a good time to plant because the roots on woody plants continue to grow long after the top has gone dormant. So lower temperatures, fall rains, with any luck, that also further reduces stress on the plant as it goes into dormancy. So that's one of the reasons why it is such a perfect time of year to plant. And nurseries and garden centers are discounting, like you mentioned, because it is really tough to overwinter a lot of these plants that they're storing. The ironic thing is the most tender part of the plant is the roots. A lot of these nurseries and garden centers have to overwinter these plants in pots, so they need to be covered with really deep insulating mulch, and it's expensive to do that. So that's just really an additional expense that the nurseries would prefer to avoid. So quite often you will find really good bargains right now. The other thing that I want to mention is even though it's a bargain, it's not a bargain if it's not the plant that you want. So we've talked a lot this year about plant selection, and we'll continue to do that moving forward, but you really want to make sure that it's a plant that you want and that you have the space for it. And then when you buy it, you can get it in the ground straight away. Now, the selection at the garden centers obviously isn't as great as it is in the spring, but there are still so many good plants to choose from. So plants purchased and planted now will have a season's head start on those planted next spring. And they will also have been through the initial survival process, and they will transplant well into your yard. And when you are shopping at that nursery or garden center, think about how much less gardening pressure you're feeling right now. Imagine how they feel at the nursery. So, busy spring Saturdays are really successful for nurseries because the days and the nights work to get the plants ordered, shipped, unloaded, displayed, and sold. But the spring, it really leaves nurseries very little time to do anything but sell plants. But in the fall, there's a more leisurely selection process. You can get some really excellent advice from, Utah certified professionals that work at your local garden center because they're not as busy as they are in the spring. So it's a great time to have a visit and buy some of those plants, trees, and shrubs that you love and get them in the ground now. Okay, we're going to be back and we're going to have Mike Goldberg from Quality Flowers and Plants Garden Center. Stay with us.
She's more than just gardening puns and sage advice. It's Gardening Utah with Jana Francis on 860 KKAT. Gardening Utah, available wherever you get your podcasts and at 860kkat.com/garden. Here's Jana Francis.
Welcome back to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis, and with me is Mike Goldberg from the nursery, Quality Flowers and Plants. Mike, thanks so much for being here with me today.
Oh, it's nice to be with you.
This is so fun. Well, so I was telling the listeners in the last segment that I saw one of your Facebook posts today, and I found it so fascinating because you had mentioned, you showed a picture, and I'll repost this on the Gardening Utah Facebook page and Instagram page so everybody can see it. And you showed a picture of the greenhouse with so many green poinsettias, and you had mentioned, I'll let you tell everybody what you had mentioned, but it was just so fascinating to me. And so tell us about that post and what it's all about.
Well, I felt like the poinsettias right now are just starting to change color. And I thought it might be a good science project for a kid if they wanted to take a picture of it each week and see the changing colors of the poinsettias. Also, if anyone wanted to come in and take a look at the poinsettias changing color, they're welcome to do that. Because there are thousands of poinsettias, literally, and they're all changing color at the same time. They're all going to be in bloom at the same time. So it's quite a sight. Middle of November, towards the end of November, you see the whole greenhouse in bloom. You don't have holes from people buying poinsettias. It's just a sea of color. You've got reds, whites, pinks, orange, all sorts of colors.
Wait, there's orange poinsettias?
Yeah, there are orange poinsettias. There are some that are gold color. A lot of different colors.
Oh, that's amazing.
Some that are cinnamon colored. It's kind of like a white with red airbrushed across the top.
Oh, how gorgeous. Oh, I can't wait
Yeah,
to
there's
see
even
that.
one that's a green color, like a lemony green.
Oh, my word, that sounds beautiful. I'm going
Yeah.
to definitely have to come see. So I was mentioning earlier that I have shopped at the nursery, Quality Flowers and Plants, since I was a kid. And I've always picked up, everything from my zinnias to my dahlias, tomatoes, peppers, squash, you name it. I mean, and geraniums. So many different colors of geraniums. And I've just had so much fun shopping there through the years. And I don't know that I've ever been in to buy poinsettias. So I'm really excited to come and have a look. So yeah, all Gardening Utah listeners, definitely you're going to want to, if you're in that area and your kids are interested, what a fun thing to do, to see something, in real life and be able to go into the nursery and see these green poinsettias and watch the change. What an interesting, fun, educational experiment, really.
It is. And right now, they're starting to change, but you don't see necessarily red or pink or white. You see that the leaf is starting to get lighter.
Oh.
And so it's quite interesting.
So tell me a little bit about the life cycle of poinsettias. Like when how old are these plants that you're ready to sell this coming holiday season? And walk us through kind of the process.
Well, they're really not that old. We start them in July from a cutting. They're all patented varieties. And, you've got to watch a lot of different things. Your fertilizer, your light. They get what's called pinch, where you pinch out the growth tips so that they branch. You're spraying them with stuff to try and keep them shorter. It's quite intense. It's considered one of the most difficult commercial crops to grow. That doesn't mean it's the most difficult plant. It's just that some plants, like orchids, are maybe more difficult, but you revolve the whole greenhouse around it, and suddenly it's easier.
Gotcha. That's so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Now, why did I think that poinsettias needed to be put in the dark at some point in order to flower, or not, in order to change color?
Well, it used to be that way. What they do is they start looking at shorter days. So when you're trying to flower it at home, you've got to be careful that you don't turn the lights on when the sun goes down. If you turn the light on at night for, say, 15 minutes, that's enough to throw it off. And, when I was a kid, I grew up in this business. We used to do what's called black clothing, where we would pull black plastic and create a dark night, artificially making the days shorter earlier. But they've developed new varieties that will automatically change color based on the length of the day. So if you've got one now that's green, then you would want to make it dark when it becomes dark outside.
Okay, that is so fascinating. Because I've got one from last year, and I am such a garden person that for me, I could never possibly throw out a poinsettia. For me, it's like, well, it's a growing thing. I've got to keep it going. And I just discovered the other day, and kind of paying more attention, that it looks quite beautiful, but it's all the green tops. So this is the first time I've ever actually been able to keep a poinsettia this long.
Well, if you start to let it become dark when the sun goes down now, it will bloom for Christmas.
Oh my word, I'm so excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm definitely going to have to come get some of these unique colors from you. I mean, these different varieties and stuff sound incredible.
They are, and then we've got big ones that are just huge, and actually it's, multiple plants put together essentially in the same pot, but you make it look like one great big plant.
Oh, interesting. Okay, all the tips and tricks.
Yeah, we have a lot of people that'll come in and take pictures with the plants. The first year that I took over, half the customers would come in day after Thanksgiving and then leave without buying anything, and I wondered what was going on. And then they told me, they come in, they take a look at the plants, and then they come back later to buy whatever they wanted.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, last year we had a professional photographer that came out and took photos of families for their Christmas photos, and a Santa dropped in and everything.
Oh my word.
Yeah, it was when customers would come in and they'd have their children, they'd see Santa, their faces would light up. So that was kind of nice.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what you'll have to do one day is hire a Santa for the day and advertise it and tell people to come in and get their family photos at the nursery Quality Flowers and Plants.
I think I've gained enough weight that maybe I could be the Santa.
Oh, geez. Oh, man, I'm thinking about Christmas now, and I'm getting all in the Christmas spirit. This is fun to even think about Christmas.
It's great. It's a great holiday. You put up a tree, you put some decorations, you put poinsettias in, and it makes everything cheerful. Absolutely. That's really what flowers do. You're buying something to cheer a person up or to cheer yourself up.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
So how much are your poinsettias, and when do you start? Why am I saying poinsettia? It's poinsettia. It's just one of those.
Well, either way, they start at $8.95, go on up. We also have some in 4.5-inch pots, and they run about $5.95.
Okay.
But, for a nice big full plant, it's about $8.95 on up.
Yeah. Okay, that's amazing. Okay, so tell me a little bit about when you buy the poinsettia. What is the best care that people can give them besides obviously watering? I notice that sometimes people, they don't realize, oh, wow, I need to keep this watered. Tell me a little bit about good care.
Well, the biggest problem people have in this area is they will water it in the afternoon, then the temperature in your house drops, and the roots start rotting. That's very easy to happen. So we tell people that to water in the morning on the days in which they water. And what we do is tell them, instead of putting their finger into the pot to see if it needs water or not, we tell them to lift the plant up. If it's heavy, they don't need to water it. If it's light, then they do. And after a while, you figure out how often you need to water. Because if it's light, that means there's no water in there. If it's heavy, there's plenty of water.
That's an excellent, excellent tip.
Yeah.
And now as far as lighting goes, I know that a lot of the poinsettias end up in office buildings and in dark rooms. What kind of lighting do they need? Or at that point, is it just decorative and they're fine?
You don't need to worry about lighting because when you buy a poinsettia, you want to buy it in full bloom. If it's like halfway through the bloom process and you buy it and take it, it'll stop coloring up. That's when you end up with a bloom that's got red and maybe little bits of green around the edges.
Okay.
But, not like maybe an inch around the edges, not 1/4 inch, but yeah.
Okay, that's an excellent tip. And I know a lot of the poinsettias have the aluminum, sort of that aluminum foil decorative with the coloring around the outside of the pot. Do you suggest that that's removed?
It'll grow better without that, but most people put it on because they want something decorative.
Yeah.
If you can let air go through the bottom of the pot and up, it's always better for a plant. Whether it's a poinsettia or an azalea or mum or any plant, that's always better. But people want to see something decorative. It's also a matter of where you're displaying it. If you're putting it on the ground by a Christmas tree, maybe people won't see the bottom of the pot. Depending upon the size you buy. If you buy one in a 6-inch or 6.5-inch pot, you're going to see the pot. If you buy one in an 8.5-inch pot, you probably won't see the pot because the plant will have a head on it that's maybe 30 inches across.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and so when do they actually go on sale?
We'll sell them to people whenever they want, but you really do want to buy it when it's in full bloom or close to full bloom. So we have people that'll come in probably around November 20th.
Yeah.
That's about right. November 20th till the end of November are prime times because you've got a lot to choose from. They're out in bloom. But then you've got plenty of people that come in at the beginning of December too.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what are the other plants that you're selling right now? I know that you've got the pansies, correct?
We've got pansies. We have a handful of perennials. That's the main thing. We've got all colors of pansies, a whole bunch of them. We're sold out of the flowering cabbage and things like that, but tons of pansies.
And it's completely okay to plant pansies this time of year. In fact, it's ideal.
Yeah, this is the best time because you'll have the largest plant in the spring without it being stretched. But a lot of people hit this time of year, they pull out their plants and it's cold. So then we actually sell more pansies in the spring because people hit March and April and they want some color, but they don't want it to freeze.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't that interesting how, you at the beginning of the season, it's just this, you're so excited to just buy, everything. And pansies are that very first glimpse of summer of what's ahead.
And the colors are bright. If they could take the heat of the summer, I think you'd see pansies everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. Okay, we'll be right back here on Gardening Utah. Stay with us.
860 KKAT with Jana Francis and Gardening Utah, where it's always mulch time. She really does have the nicest yard on the block. It's Gardening Utah with Jana Francis on 860 KKAT.
Welcome back to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis, and with me here is Mike Goldberg with the nursery, Quality Flowers and Plants, right over there on 3300 South and 1046 East in Salt Lake City. Thanks again for being here, Mike.
Oh, thank you.
So I was saying earlier in the show that I have been going to Quality for so many years, and I have so many memories of like stacking bedding plants double, you've got those double racks, and I've just filled them up with zinnias and petunias and just so many different annuals. Tell me, how long have you guys been in business, and tell me about your start there.
Well, we've been in business for over 50 years. And when we opened up, it was a 2-lane road. We were out on the edge of the city. People thought, wow, you're so far out there. I mean, for people to drive out to 3300 South, that was really quite a drive. Yeah. And I remember my father telling me one day, Mike, this is going to be a main street one day. And I just, I was a young kid. I thought, okay.
Wow. And forgive me for not knowing, but were the people needing to come from the north, correct? Like 3300 South?
Yeah, they were.
South to them?
You had some people that lived like in the Walker Lane area and Cottonwood Lane, over by Cottonwood Mall, whatever. But that was really, a lot of that was orchards. And to give you an idea, when we built our first greenhouse there was a guy that raised he raised birds that people would go hunting for. I can't think of the name of them.
Oh, like pigeons or pheasants?
No, pheasants.
Okay.
He raised pheasants, and I remember seeing some fly across, and when they fly, they make a lot of noise. And I remember thinking to myself, how difficult could it be to hunt for pheasant when they make so much noise and they fly so slow? And people that hunt told me it's not so easy to quickly point a shotgun, shoot a pheasant. But they're loud. I don't know if you've ever seen one. They are really loud when they fly.
Oh, yes. I don't know that I've ever seen one in the wild, but I live over in the Murray area right up against the Jordan River, and I hear them quite often. And so I can spot them just by hearing their noise.
Right.
Yeah, but there's not as many as there used to be because now there's foxes.
Yeah.
So they're kind of cutting down the pheasant population.
Yeah, we had the guy with the pheasants. We had another one that raised chickens and was selling eggs. I mean, it was a very different area back then. Very different.
Yeah. Well, your dad was exactly right. It's definitely a main street now.
Yeah, it is, and the city has become so concentrated that, I don't know. I don't know. What can I say? What can I
Yeah.
say?
Yeah.
Very different now.
And so it was started as, and it still is, you're a grower. You grow all of your plant material there, correct?
We do. In the beginning, we were a main supplier to Kmart, and then we started to do retail, and we do both now. Obviously, we don't supply Kmart anymore.
Sure.
But, we try to grow a quality product. We really do.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've never had bad luck, ever.
Oh,
and the
thank you.
prices are so reasonable.
Well, we have a lot of quantity to move, so we really do try to price it well. We really do.
And so tell me when you took over.
I took over almost 30 years ago.
Wow.
I had gone to California for a brief period, and then I came back and started running the place. And, it's a lot of responsibility.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
How many employees do you have there?
Oh, it varies through the year. Right now, we've only got about 5. But,
Okay.
Then, of course, for the spring, we get more employees. And we have 2 other outlets that we open up called Marvin's Gardens and Marvin's Gardens West.
Oh, I didn't realize that was you guys.
Yeah, that's us because my father's name was Marvin. And when he opened up, everyone told him, why didn't you name your place Marvin's Gardens? So when he opened up another one, the one in Sandy, he opened it up, he called it Marvin's Gardens. And literally within a week, I think it was even the next day, he got a phone call from an attorney at Parker Brothers telling him that had, hey, what are you doing? The name was used in Monopoly. And he said, my name is Marvin. Oh. And so they asked him how big it was, and they told him he could do it as long as he didn't use any advertising that was like Monopoly. So we can't issue a coupon that looks like Monopoly money, for instance.
Gotcha.
Gardens.
Oh, my word, I just made that connection. Okay, that's a really cool story.
Yeah.
And so do you transport the bedding from the greenhouse at Quality over to Marvin's Gardens?
We grow some there, and then we supply them with some more that's grown at 33rd. And it's just for the retail bedding plant season.
Yeah. Okay. So so Marvin's Gardens isn't open right now?
They're not open now. They usually open up about April 1st, close down, end of June, beginning of July.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really good tip. That is so interesting to know. So your father's name was Marvin Goldberg.
His name was, yes.
Okay. Why did he start the nursery? What was his...
He grew up in the business when he was a kid. He grew up through the Great Depression, and they had some fruit trees, and they were selling fruit on the side of the road up on Highland Drive. And then one day they had some flowers that they had grown, and they had them in a bucket, and a guy offered to buy them from him. And then they bought some more and more and so forth. And that was part of another business. And then he broke off from them, from his brothers and sisters, and started his own place.
Wow. That is so cool.
Yeah. Our first greenhouse was made out of wood and plastic.
Oh, wow. Now, how many greenhouses do you have now?
Well, we've got the 3 locations. I don't know how many bays. One greenhouse might be bigger than another, and one, our main facility, the greenhouse twists and turns. So, it'd be hard to describe.
Yeah, definitely. I know what you mean from having been there. Okay, so when we come back after this quick break, we're going to talk a little bit about how these bedding plants have changed through the years. And I don't know if you remember, listeners, that at one point it was all about marigolds and petunias, and the consumer habits are changing a little bit. So we're going to learn from Mike a little bit more about what are the hot sellers now. Stay with us.
She's more than just gardening puns and sage advice. It's Gardening Utah with Jana Francis on 860 KKAT. 860 KKAT with more of the fastest growing show on radio. It's Gardening Utah with Jana Francis.
Welcome back to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis, and with me here is Mike Goldberg with the nursery, Quality Flowers and Plants, right there on 33rd South and 1046 East in Salt Lake City. Thanks again for being here. This has been a lot of fun, Mike.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about how the climate has changed the flowers.
Well, as an example, we try to grow plants that will do well for people, but we used to have a couple plants that we would grow just because of the number of requests. So like 20 years ago, we might grow 100 clematis for people that really wanted to try clematis, and when they would see it in bloom in their yard, they would get maybe 5 blooms, and they're looking at it going, isn't that gorgeous? And they'll show it to their neighbor. And in their mind, they're seeing the clematis they saw in Louisiana that was full of blooms. Their neighbor sees 5 and, says, yeah, that's okay. And people had a hard time getting through the first year with it. We would find that maybe 10-15% of the people would get through the first year. If they got through the first year, they were fine, never bloomed really heavy. Well, now, most people are able to get through the first year. They'll put petunias to shade the roots. They're careful with it. And the plant, they don't get 5 blooms, they get a lot of blooms on it. And the seasons have changed. Also the way we time our crops has changed because, it used to be that it'd be really cold in September.
Yeah.
It's not cold in September anymore. You'll have 100-degree days.
Yeah. I mean, I remember as a kid, it always remembering that, we were pulling out the garden in, mid to late September. And now I'm just thinking about it,
Used to be September 1st. You'd see things like your cannas getting wind whipped and hit by the frost, pulling out the marigolds, and so things have changed. Plus you've had a lot of new cultivars over the years that have really been dramatic improvements. When I was a kid, everyone would plant petunias, marigolds, geraniums. And geraniums were the plant you planted if you had a lot of money. If you didn't, well, you stuck more to the petunias and the marigolds. Well, now you've got all sorts of things, calibrachoas, million bells, some really fancy petunias that completely blow away everything out there.
Oh, they do.
Zinnias, all sorts of things.
I am completely obsessed with zinnias.
Yeah. And, the varieties of zinnias now completely blow away anything you would have seen even 10 years ago.
Absolutely. There's so many different varieties and even the small compact ones.
Right. And it used to be that if you grew zinnias, people had a really tough time with them because they would get powdery mildew on them like crazy.
Yeah.
Now you plant zinnias, and because it's warmer, you don't have that problem until, the fall.
Yeah.
And in the fall, you don't care because you're moving on to other things anyway.
Yeah, they're on the way out.
Yeah.
What about daylilies? What have you discovered with what's going on with daylilies nowadays?
Daylilies, we don't see much of a change in it. It's starting to come back a little. It's, what can I say? It's like one of your older flowers. People like looking for some of the new stuff that looks different,
Yeah. Yeah, I've discovered that too, because I tend personally, I love the new cultivars and I love trying the new petunia waves and all the other varieties of petunias.
Sure.
But I am so nostalgic about a few plants that I just, it was what was in grandma's front yard, and that was always 4 o'clocks, Daphne bush, geraniums, and, zinnias and pansies.
Well, like for me, I remember we used to grow these dinner plate dahlias when I was a kid.
Oh.
And people used to sell the cut flowers for, on the road, out of buckets. And then they just kind of disappeared. And I remember traveling over in Ukraine one time in the winter, and I saw these dinner plate dahlias. Well, not the winter, it's more towards the fall. And I thought, wow, I haven't seen those since I was a kid. So we started selling some dinner plate dahlias at our store. And people were like, wow, those, the people hadn't seen a bloom that large. Now you've got dahlias that, are they dinner plates? No, they're big blooms. I like them better because when you grow a dinner plate dahlia, you get this really big bloom. You've got to stake it up. It's a lot more work. And you cut it off. Then you start getting blooms that are maybe 4 or 5 inches across.
Yeah.
But the plant doesn't have as good of a growth pattern as these others that start off with 4 or 5 inch blooms, but the plant looks bushy, it looks full, you're not staking it up. Granted, you can't get that amazing first bloom, but the rest look nice.
Yeah.
And, the average person isn't out there staking up their plants. In fact, I would say the average person doesn't even fertilize unless they see their neighbor fertilizing, and they say to themselves, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, and like weeding, when do they weed? They weed when they see their neighbor weeding.
Yeah.
And they look at their yard and they go, maybe I better weed.
Yeah, it's time to get out there and keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
So when we were talking earlier today, before the podcast, you shared the funnest story that I loved to hear. This is my favorite memory. I like kids. It's my favorite memory. What we used to do is we would we'd sell pumpkin with just a generic pumpkin label. But a few of them were Atlantic Giants. And we were selling them for what I paid for the seed. An Atlantic Giant is a pumpkin that will get up to 1,200 pounds if you do everything right. But if you grow it like a regular pumpkin, you get a 50-pound pumpkin. And people would always be thrilled. They feel like a master gardener because instead of getting this small little pumpkin, they got a 50-pound pumpkin. Well, I had a little kid come in, and he was so thrilled. He said to me, you should have seen our pumpkin last year. And I said, okay. He goes, it was 300 pounds. No, I'm serious. It was really 300 pounds. It was 3 feet tall. It was 3 feet wide. Like, you wouldn't believe how big this pumpkin was. And he was really lucky. He probably had parents that, he goes to fertilize it. And, a kid, hey, if 1 bucket of fertilizer is good, well, then maybe 2 is better. The next day, maybe we should put 4, and, most parents would tell a kid, don't do that, you're going to kill it. And they'd stop him. But his parents obviously let him keep putting more and more fertilized water on it. And I'm sure the parents were amazed that they ended up with this 300-pound pumpkin. You think he's a future horticulturist?
Yeah, he was just really thrilled. Really, just amazing. That's my favorite memory at the place. Yeah.
So you mean to tell me that your pumpkins, every once in a while, you put in a surprise?
Well, I don't do that anymore. I used to do that. No. We would put just a regular pumpkin with a generic pumpkin label, something like Atlantic Giant, that we would sell with an Atlantic Giant label.
Yeah. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
That's fun. I love that story.
Well, yeah, and also now people are more into what kind of vegetable they're getting. And another thing that happened like this year is we would put heirloom tomatoes on sale. And, you have to do your advertising way in advance. And nobody knew, what was coming up this spring. I don't think you had any indication of that.
Totally.
And tomatoes were very popular. and there was a run on them at the different places. Well, we had an advertisement. I'd forgotten that we had put the price in there. We had an advertisement of 99 cents for heirloom tomatoes.
Oh, my word.
And we had 5 benches of them, which is thousands of them, and tens of thousands. And then, one day we start getting all these telephone calls from people. Do you have heirloom tomatoes? Yes. How much? Are they still 99 cents? Yes. And it was ringing off the hook like that. And then we realized the ad had gone out. So the first people that got the mailer rushed up there. You can imagine, it's like toilet paper calling a place. Do you have toilet paper? Yeah, we got 5 benches of them. Well, we sold them all in like 2-3 days because everyone descended on the place.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
What a story.
We had other crops coming on and coming along, but, because of that advertising, it just was intense.
Yeah. Well, and even possibly without it, the word this year just spread around of like who still has vegetables.
Right.
Because everybody wanted to get their garden in. So many first-time gardeners this year.
Oh, a lot of them. A lot of first-time gardeners.
It'll be interesting. Hopefully a lot of these gardeners had, these new gardeners had so much fun going out and enjoying their very first homegrown tomato, and they're going to be hooked.
I think they will. I think so. A lot of people were stuck at home. They didn't have a lot to do.
Yep.
And so tomatoes, that's something easy to grow.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, though, is a lot of these people grow these old varieties, then they have the old problems, and they wonder, why am I having these old-time problems? I didn't have these problems for 20 years. Well, you're growing the tomatoes from 20 years ago.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, things have changed so much. How many different varieties of tomatoes do you usually sell?
I would say probably about 20 to 25.
Okay.
But we'll have some at different times,
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So in general, tell me what the listener can find in the spring at Quality Flowers and Plants.
Oh, we have all sorts of annuals and perennials, everything from petunias and geraniums to cannas and zinnias, all sorts of plants for your planter boxes and hanging baskets, just tons of different items for that. Roses, for your garden as well. And then all sorts of different perennials, plants that come back each year.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, thanks so much for being here. This has been a riot, and I can't wait to have you back on the show sometime.
Oh, thank you. It's nice having me here.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Gardening Utah. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks so much to Mike Goldberg of Quality Flowers and Plants. Again, their nursery is on 3300 South, 1046 East in Salt Lake City, and it is so fun to walk in. One of the things I really love about it, and I didn't mention this earlier, is because it's inside a greenhouse, and that fresh air smell you can only get when you walk into a greenhouse, kind of like when you go into like other places like Cactus and Tropicals. Oh my goodness, I just love that smell. Anyway, it's such a wonderful place to visit, and of course, buy flowers and plants. So next week, join us because we're going to be talking about fall lawn care. So everything you need to do to button up your lawn for the season and say goodbye to mowing, at least for a little while. Okay, so please make sure, go to Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe button, look up Gardening Utah, find us there and subscribe. That will help us out tremendously. Shout out to our producer, Lambo. Thanks again for listening to Gardening Utah. And remember, grow big or go home.
When you're ready to grow big or go home, make your neighbors green with envy. Get the Gardening in Utah podcast, Gardening Utah, available wherever you get your podcasts and at 860kkat.com/garden.
We are supported by ProgressivePlant.com. They are the experts that the professionals go to for all things plants. Progressive Plants has over 1 million plants at their 100-acre nursery up in Copperton. And you can shop those plants from right at home at ProgressivePlants.com. They are your neighbors next door and experts at helping you choose the perfect and unique plants that will thrive in your location. Progressive Plants is passionate about helping homeowners, expert gardeners, novices alike choose the correct plant for your soil. They don't just grow plants, they know plants. Let Progressive Plants help you today. Just go to ProgressivePlants.com and check out their wide selection. You can also go to the Design tab and look at the expert designers that they have that can help you plan your perfect yard. Visit ProgressivePlants.com today.